theater friends, and welcome to this new thing I'm doing. It is, at least tentatively titled, Audition Advice with Aunt Mugsy, because I needed another AU sound for alliteration. Anyway, this is a new thing I'm trying. Like I said, it's a lot easier to script and film than, full reviews, so I'll be able to post more frequently. For this series, I'm mainly focusing on musical theater, but we might stray into other areas of theater later. In non-pandemic times, you'll most likely be auditioning in person, so that's how I'm going to gear these videos, but I will cover virtual auditions in a later video. So let's start at the very beginning, which, as we all know, is a very good place to start. So, you've seen a casting call for Musical the Musical, your favorite show ever, at your local theater, and you've decided, yes, I'm going to do the thing. The casting call will have a ton of information: the director, the music director, the choreographer, a summary of the show, some instructions for the audition itself, and the list of characters. It can be a little overwhelming. You read the character descriptions and see some age ranges and some voice types listed. So let's start there. Finding your voice type, and more importantly, your range, is useful for musical theater, but not quite as important as it is in opera. In opera, your voice type determines which characters you will be playing. There's very little wiggle room, whereas in musical theater, it's a bit squishier. There are 6 voice types total. As an artifact of opera/the olden days, they are gendered, so 3 for men/masculine identifying people, and then 3 for women/feminine identifying people. It gets a little mushy, but gender is arbitrary, so there you go. And I don't have time for any turfy or gender essentialist nonsense on my page, so if you plan on commenting on that, you can leave. The first thing you'll want to do is find your range. I've linked a video here that can be used. You just sing along with it and write down the lowest note and highest note that you can sing comfortably. Nobody wants screeching or growling, so that key word is comfortably. Also, if you don't have that note every single day, I wouldn't put it down, just for the sake of you never know what will be happening vocally with you in that audition. You could be sick. You could have eaten something that really gummed up your vocal cords. It's just better to be on the safe side. And so that is your range. The next part is a little more subjective, and it's called your timbre. Timbre. It's most easily described as the color of your voice. Think about Adele and then think about Taylor Swift. Even if they sang the exact same song, same key, arrangement, everything, it would sound totally different because they have different timbres to their voice. So keep that in mind, and maybe write down if you think your voice is on the brighter side or the darker side. For our ladies/female identifying folk, the 3 voice types that you will be are soprano, mezzo-soprano, or alto. Alto is sometimes called contralto. Soprano and alto are also used for boys whose voices haven't broken yet. A quick note, with all the ranges I'm giving generalities. Personally, I call myself a soprano, but my range extends all the way down to F3. Also, your voice doesn't even really settle until your 30s, so if you're younger, don't get attached to a voice type just yet. It'll probably change. Soprano is the highest voice type and typically sings from A3, which is A below middle C, to C6, and it tends to have a brighter timbre. In ensemble settings, sopranos most frequently sing the melody, but may also sing some upper harmonies. It's the most common voice type for female identifying people. Mezzo-soprano is next, often just shortened to mezzo. It is the middle voice for women. Mezzo means middle or half in Italian, so it's in the middle. Makes sense. Mezzos typically sing from G3 to A5 and have a slightly darker timbre than sopranos. As the name implies, mezzos often have the middle harmonies in ensemble songs, or will get lumped in with the altos. And that brings us to altos, the lowest voice type for women. And this range is typically given as F3 to F5. They have the darkest timbre and often sing the low harmonies and ensemble numbers. If you can read music and hold your part, you'll likely get put in the alto line and group numbers. Source, I have done 17 musical productions, and I've sung alto in 12 of those. Now on to the men. So for men, the highest voice type is tenor. It's typically classified as C3 to C5 and has a brighter timbre. A lot of modern musical theater leads tend to be tenors with a sort of rock sensibility to them. Baritones are the middle voice type and also the most common. The typical range for this voice type is G2 to G4. Sometimes you'll hear baritenor, which is what it sounds like, a smushed up version of baritones and tenors. In musical theater land, that role could be played by either a tenor with a strong lower extension, think of your Tam Mutus, your Ramin Karimlus, or a baritone with a strong upper extension, Brian Darcy James, Michael Arden, Norbert Leo Butz. These are Broadway baritenors. So basses are the lowest voice type. Typically, they sing from E2 to E4, but to be honest, actual bass roles are few and far between in modern musical theater. The best example I can give of one is Hades in Hadestown. Patrick Page hits a ridiculous and impressive G1. Just every time I hear it, I'm like, whoa. So you've probably guessed by now, basses have the darkest timbre. So a quick note on some style. You've probably heard the term belting used inaccurately pretty frequently, often in the phrase belting it out. In the musical theater world, that is not what that means. And it's a pet peeve of mine when people try to use it as such. Belting is a specific type of singing in which the thyroarytenoid muscle is dominant, often called TA for short, you can see why. The best way I can describe this would be it's taking what's called your chest voice, so called because you can feel it resonate in your chest, and using it to sing notes that would normally be sung in your head voice. Belting is the corollary to legit singing. Legit is more akin to classical technique, though it's moved a little bit away from this in the modern era. In terms of roles, belting is your Elphaba in Wicked, Eponine in Les Mis, Evan in Dear Evan Hansen. Legit is your Christine Daae, or literally every role ever in Phantom of the Opera, Cosette in Les Mis, Freddie in My Fair Lady. So sometimes you'll see legit soprano or mezzo belter in the character description, and that'll give you an idea of what the team will be looking for stylistically for that character. And keep in mind, you can have a soprano belt or a legit mezzo or any other voice type with it applied. Though I've never seen anything say bass belter. That would be interesting. Okay, great. Now we have your voice type kind of figured out, so we can move on to picking material. When picking your song, look for something similar in style to the show for which you're auditioning. For example, you wouldn't audition for Spring Awakening with a song from Oklahoma or Les Mis with a song from Rent. Looking at other material by the same composer is a great place to start, especially for very prolific writers like Stephen Sondheim, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Richard Rodgers, or Cole Porter, who have catalogs of songs to choose from, though it's not a hard and fast rule. Choosing a song can be a bit of an overwhelming task, so here are a few things to consider. 1. Do you like the song? If you don't like it, don't sing it. Trust me, people can tell when you don't like it. 2. Does the song fit the show you're auditioning for stylistically, like we talked about above? An example of this being done well would be singing something from Drowsy Chaperone to audition for Thoroughly Modern Millie. Both are contemporary musicals originally starring Sutton Foster that are set in the 1920s and emulate that music, but with a modern sensibility. Fun fact, both shows were also written by women. 3. Does the song fit well in your voice? Is it easy to sing? Can you sing it even if you're nervous or feeling under the weather? We all hope for ideal conditions, but there's always things that are out of control, especially in audition. 4. Does the song give you a chance to act? Singing well is only half the battle in musical theater. If you're not acting the song, you're going to have a hard time getting cast. Generally, you want to end the song in a different place emotionally from where you started it. 5. Does this song cut well? We'll talk about this more in the next section. 6. Can the accompanist play it easily? This only applies if there will be a live accompanist at the audition, but if there will be, please, for the love of all that is holy, be nice and polite to them. Your sheet music should be clean, easy to read, clearly marked. Choose a composer who's not notoriously difficult to sight read if you're not auditioning for one of their shows. For example, one thing you hear constantly is use Sondheim for Sondheim, or Jason Robert Brown to audition for Jason Robert Brown. This also means making sure there aren't a billion sharps or flats, either in your key or as accidentals in the piece itself. The accompanist is your friend. Do everything in your power to make their job as easy as possible. Also, no lead sheets, which are just the vocal line with some chords over top. Make sure it's an actual accompaniment. These are pretty easy to find on Performer Stuff, Music Note, Sheet Music Direct. I'll link them in the description. 7. Is the song age appropriate? That's not to say you can't curse if it's written in the song, though don't choose overly explicit or raunchy material. Trust me on that one. It's more about knowing what age you look or could realistically play. You wouldn't go singing Tomorrow from Annie if you're in your mid-20s and look in your mid-20s, and you don't sing Could I Leave You from Follies if you're still in high school, and especially if you still look like you're in high school. 8. Is it race appropriate? Some songs can be sung by a person of any ethnicity. Almost every Golden Age song would be a good example about this. I say almost because The King and I exists. That's a whole bag of worms I'm not getting into right now. But for certain songs, the character's race is inextricable from the context of the story. I Feel Pretty from West Side Story, I Know Where I've Been from Hairspray, I'd Give My Life from You from Miss Saigon, all come to mind. As a more white-passing Hispanic person, if you couldn't tell by my lovely avatar here, my advice is if you're questioning whether or not you should sing it, probably don't. Though this is more of a thing to do with my white and white-passing theater friends. It comes down to punching down and histories of colonization and oppression that we're not going to have a 1,000-word theater essay on right now. I may talk about that later because I actually wrote a paper on that in college that scored very well and I'm still really proud of. Okay, one final note on overdone material. When searching the internet for material, you'll come across a lot of do not sing lists. I even have one on my blog that I might talk about later, either in this series or maybe in a separate video. To be honest, these lists only really apply to professional auditions or auditions for college programs. Some schools actually have official do not sing lists. The songs on these lists are often put there because they're overexposed. You don't want to be the 14th girl that night singing Gimme Gimme from Thoroughly Modern Millie or Popular from Wicked. It helps you stand out to pick something a bit more unique. Or a song may be on the list because it's associated with a specific artist. Example, Somewhere Over the Rainbow is always going to be Judy Garland's song. However, if you're auditioning for a school show or a community theater show, these songs are less taboo. Or if you're going to sing them, you'd better know for certain that you will be the best rendition that team hears all day. It's mainly about being memorable. Continuing on, you'll want to practice with an accompanist or a piano track as frequently as you can. YouTube has a lot of great free accompaniments and karaoke tracks. If you search your song and piano accompaniment, or your song and piano karaoke, or even just your song and karaoke, you will most likely find one. If not, you could find it on another specific website like Piano Tracks that specializes in creating piano accompaniments for various songs. But now we move on to the most important part of your material. Unfortunately, in auditions, you will very seldom, if ever, get to sing the full song. Often you'll have to cut your music to either 16 or 32 bars, sometimes as little as 8 bars. For those who don't know, a bar is sometimes called a measure. It is called so because it is in between two bar lines on the sheet music. So when you see 16 measures or 32 bars in a casting call, they don't really tend to mean literally only sing this many measures or we will stop you. It's more of a time limit thing than anything else. 8 bars is mostly just used to see, does this person have a pleasant tone and can they stay on pitch? A good rule of thumb is that 16 bars should take between 30 and 45 seconds to sing, with a minute being the absolute longest. And 32 bars should be between 1 minute and 1 minute and 30, 2 minutes tops. But to be honest, 2 minutes is a really long time and they may stop you. Don't take it personally if they do, it just means they've heard enough. But you want to be respectful of everyone's time. So when you're cutting your music, you want to make sure of a few things. The cut you're using should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, story-wise or emotion-wise. Like I said earlier, you should end up in a different place from where you started. 2, your cut should make sense musically. Please be aware of key changes and the like. You don't want to go from one chord to another chord that makes absolutely no sense. Your accompanist will not be happy. 3, the music should highlight your abilities. Say you have this really great high C and it's written in the music, use a cut of the music that shows that off. Luckily, there are now a lot of sites that offer pre-cut audition music if you're a little wary about making the cuts yourself. Performer Stuff and Music Notes both offer these. Not sponsored, but I do use them a lot. Or if you know a musician, they may be able to help you out. A quick note on monologues. Sometimes you'll be asked to prepare a monologue in addition to a song, normally a 1 or 2 minute monologue. This should contrast with your song. Example, if you're singing a happy or funny song, choose a dramatic monologue. The monologue should be more naturalistic, meaning not in verse, so I'm sorry unless they say, hey, do some Shakespeare for us. Don't do Shakespeare. And it should, like your song, have a beginning, middle, and end, and show an emotional arc. A good general note about material that I mentioned earlier. Don't choose anything that has excessive swearing, cursing, is very explicit, or deals with heavy topics like suicide, self-harm, or mental illness. So that actually will bring us to the end of part 1. In part 2, we're going to be talking about the audition itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this little video experiment. And now I'm going to talk about the real reason I started this. I love suggesting audition material for people. So if you have an audition coming up and you are completely stumped on what you want to sing for it, go ahead and in the comments drop the show you're auditioning for, your character type / age range, and your voice type / vocal range. And I will get back to you, as many as I can. I don't expect a lot of people since I'm not exactly a popular channel right now. And tell you what songs I think you should sing. If you like this video or like weird nerdy theater rambling, go ahead and click like, and maybe if you are even feeling so inclined, hit subscribe if you want more of this weird nerdy rambling that I do. Thanks again for hanging out with me. I'm Muggsy, and I look forward to seeing you next time.